Hey, red carpet ring here. We'll talk about the reaction on Dixie Carter Destroying TNA, why Dixie Carter failed in TNA. This will be from Billy Corgan on Kurt Angle Podcast. We'll explain the reaction to Dixie Carter. We'll get more to that very shortly. Stay tuned. All right. Now, recently, Billy Corgan, the owner of NWA National Wrestling Alliance, did an interview on the Kurt Angle Show podcast, and he explained his previous business with Dixie Carter while he was affiliated with TNA, while Dixie Carter ran TNA, and explained of how she destroyed TNA, and I will react to that, and we will get to that shortly.
So because of that rep, I could see where she was maybe a little reluctant to open the purse string.
Billy, as we sit here today, what is your opinion overall of Dixie Carter?
You know, my life with Dixie sort of had three chapters. My first chapter was I got to know her as a person, and liked her and respected her. I understood she was in an interesting, tough spot. I like many people, I struggled for why this woman who had worked as a publicist, came from a very wealthy family, would want to get into professional wrestling. Much the same thing I get a lot of the time. Like, you're a rock star. Why do you want to be in this messed up business? She caught the bug, or Jarrett worked her, whatever. Whoever knows what the true story is. But to be fair, she caught the bug. She risked her reputation, and she put up a lot of financial money, and varying reports. But certainly her father once told me what he estimated that the family had lost, or at least the parent company, Panda, had lost, and it was significant. So
Now, right there, I believe a factor of Dixie Carter of why it didn't work out, because she was a publicist, as Billy Corgan stated. She was not in the wrestling business as a performer or executive. It was not, she has no background, wasn't in her family history. She didn't grow up in the business. I think, like he said, just a woman that came from a wealthy family. She was a fan, and she wanted to sign on. Pretty much similar to Tony Khan in AEW, All Elite Wrestling is right now. So I believe once they do have a lot of money and don't have the pure love for the business as they should, and don't want to learn the business or didn't grow up in it, not to say that people grow up in the business don't fail as well, but I believe that was a big factor in why Dixie Carter ran into financial issues, because it was her first merry-go-round. But back to Billy Corgan.
they had made a big commitment. So I was, I guess, empathetic, but also, like many people, I had some influence on her. And back to my Heyman story, I was trying to help her steer the product in the right direction, and she seemed receptive to that. She at least listened, even if she didn't do what I said. But at least there was a sense there was a openness, because Dixie had been in the world. She'd worked for country stars like Dottie West, and because of her background with her family, and because even of her husband's background as a singer, there's a worldliness to Dixie that maybe wrestling fans didn't appreciate. She wasn't just some wrestling mark who came from a wealthy family. Chapter 2 is now I'm in business with Dixie. Now I meet a totally different Dixie. Now I meet the Dixie that's got all that heat. Now I meet the Dixie that's telling me one thing and doing something else. Now Dixie's got people lying to me. Dixie, when I took over the company, in quotations, I technically did, she went behind my back in a bunch, and she burned every bridge so I couldn't even cross it. She was willing to essentially steal money from me. And we're talking about millions of dollars here. You know what I mean? We're not talking about like a couple $100K.
Now that right there is an issue. Now they were supposed to be good friends, whatever. Stole millions from him. That's a huge red flag in business. Moving along back to Billy Corgan.
We're talking about serious money, which, ended up with me having to turn on my friend like something out of a Vince Russo angle, suit the hell out of her, which I won. They'll say I lost, but I didn't. And how I won? I got every penny back, including legal fees. So that's chapter 2. Goodbye, Dixie. Goodbye, Serge. Goodbye, the whole thing. Goodbye, having dinner with the family around Thanksgiving. I used to stay at the Carter's house. I had dinner with the parents. Every time I go to Dallas, I go see the parents. I mean, I was in the sort of the circle. I wouldn't say it was family, but I mean, I was in the thing. Chapter 3, years goes by. I had despite the settlement, I had every opportunity after all that ended, and this was part of my settlement. I did have the capability, if I wanted, to sue Dixie. And I had grounds to sue Dixie beyond the lawsuit. That was part of the settlement. So I thought for a long time about, do I really want to get into this? And it was that thing, like, you can get into when it's like, well, this woman was my friend, but this woman tried to steal millions of dollars from you, right? So you're kind of in this thing. Well, I obviously made the decision not to go there. I kind of moved on. I got very focused on the NWA. I thought, let's just move on. Fast forward to, I think TNA was having, or Impact was having Slammiversary. I was in town and I just looked on social media. I was like, I could go to the show. It's been a while. Be fun. And I knew Scott D'Amore a little bit. I knew some of the boys that were still working there that I'd worked with. And so I asked, I went through back channels and said, do you mind if I come to the show? I think Scott or somebody wrote me, no problem. You're more than welcome. We'd love to have you. It would be great. Blah, 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 blah. And then I got this note, Dixie's going to be there. So then I had to sit there and think, okay, do I really, because I'm the type of person, if Dixie's going to be there, I don't want to ruin Dixie's night. It doesn't do me any good to show up and be like, I deserve to be here, and who cares how you feel?
Right.
So when I made the decision to go, whoever I was talking to, I said, please let Dixie know I'm not looking for a fight. So I come in peace. We see each other, we hug, we kind of catch up on family stuff, and we went kind of sort of back to chapter 1, where we just kind of skipped over all of chapter 2, and now we're cool. And as you saw recently, she did a promo,
So, despite all of that, losing millions of dollars and suing Dixie, earn it back, they became back on good terms as they were previously before he got involved with TNA business. But I believe this, in the long run, has definitely ruined Dixie Carter's reputation, even as of now. Her name's not even mentioned along of business people who ran a wrestling promotion. You also often hear the names of Vince McMahon, obviously, Tony Khan, Eric Bischoff, Paul Heyman. You don't really hear Dixie Carter's name. And it's because of situations like this here, where this really ruined her reputation in the way she treated her workers, in the way she didn't want to pay anyone. I believe that's what led to all these problems of her not paying people. She wanted to be a spotlight for TNA. It was having all this financial debt that hurt herself and the company and caused her workers to leave to go other promotions like WWE or go back to New Japan Pro Wrestling or Independent Circuit or wherever company for that matter. This is just a bad thing. But I believe that's another part where he mentioned how much Dixie Carter was in the red.
Put it this way. What's interesting about our time in TNA together, look at who was in that locker room. Bobby Lashley, Drew Galloway, Matt Hardy. It was a really, Jeff Hardy, really stacked roster. So it'd be hard to sit you down and say, Kurt, I'm going to need you to put over Shark Boy tonight. You know what I mean? No disrespect to Shark Boy. My plans were very similar to what I've tried to do with the NWA. My harp as a fan was I thought the booking had burnt the fan base one too many times. as we say, and I'll keep it PG-13, as we say, one too many effed finishes, one too many run-ins, and somebody getting hit in the head with the pipe, or you know what I mean. It's just I felt the
ridiculousness
cleaned up. I had done my job to a certain extent in the office on the booking committee, and John Geberg, who was running the company, now back to working with WWE. John and I went to battle many, many times about keeping the product as realistic as possible, and I did make some gains there. On top of that, I wanted to open up the company creatively, and I did make some gains there, and I had a lot to do with the deletion series with the Hardys and shooting off grid, and that was very, very successful. So I tried to bring some fresh energy to the company and put more emphasis on characters and storylines, and there was some sense there that was gaining ground. Business-wise, without getting too deep into the whole lawsuit thing, the whole lawsuit hinged on, and for a quick cursory lesson, Dixie needed money. I put in a bunch of money to keep the company solvent. Every time I put in money, I owned more and more of the company. I think my maximum, at one point, I owned 26% of the company. So like Dana White, for example, is an owner of UFC. He doesn't own the whole company, but he controls the company. So I didn't necessarily need to own 100% of TNA to control the company. And I was trying to figure that out with the various partners. There were mystery money people that Dixie had made deals with that I didn't even know about that showed up later. It was a mess. On top of that, the whole lawsuit that we eventually fell into hinged on the idea that TNA wasn't. I can't remember. It's a legal thing, but basically, if I could prove that TNA had more debt than it's worth, so if Dixie, I think was of the mind at the time that TNA was worth $8 million. So if I could prove that they were more than $8 million in debt, ostensibly the company was supposed to come to me in some sort of default. Dixie swore up and down that the company wasn't in more debt than $8 million. That turned out to not be true, but I only found that out later. So the whole court case was hinged on that.
So that's the issue there. He owned 26% of TNA, helped out with creative with the whole Matt Hardy deletion. And also it was a lot of debt, more than 8 million if I had to guess. Like he said, more than 8 million. It was worth 8 million. It was more debt than 8 million. So that's what caused Dixie Carter Destroying TNA financially, end up destroying the company, partnerships, losing TV deal with Spike, and wrestlers leaving the company, going elsewhere to other promotions. And Billy Corgan, of course, had to sue her, even though they're on good terms again. So that's what happened with Dixie Carter, and that's why she has not been relevant since. And that's all I have regarding this subject of reaction on Dixie Carter Destroying TNA. Why Dixie Carter failed in TNA. You guys let me know in the comment section below. What do you think of Dixie Carter's run and when she was the owner of TNA in the early 2000s up until everything just fell apart? Soon 2 videos will pop up. One will be Greatest AEW World Champion documentary. Second will be Cody Rhodes card, which is a short. Until then, it is OUT.